Like many of you, I attended public school growing up, and one of the hobbies I had back then was trading card games. I remember back in second grade, the Yu-Gi-Oh card game was released to the public, and I was given a Yu-Gi starter deck as a birthday present. We all knew Yu-Gi-Oh from the TV show and how cool it was to watch as a kid, so pretty soon, Yu-Gi-Oh exploded on the playground, and many more kids got involved, playing against each other and collecting the cards. Pokemon cards were popular too, but only from a collecting standpoint. Barely anyone knew how to play the Pokemon trading card game. They just liked the cards because it was Pokemon, a popular franchise that was on television, had videos. It was everywhere, and Pokemon still is everywhere today. I never went to any tournaments for Yu-Gi-Oh! And didn't really understand the mechanics of the game, but I had fun. I felt like one of the characters on the show, being able to play my favorite cards, but I lost interest after a couple years. I began to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Again in high school after finding a group of people at my school who liked the game, so I joined with them. I played for a while longer, but this time I stopped after I graduated. My brother got me into playing Magic, or Magic the Gathering, when I was in middle school. He and his friends were really into it, so I joined their bandwagon, doing sealed drafts for sets and going to tournaments at the local game store. I wasn't really any good at it and never pulled anything extremely valuable, but I had fun for a while. I got back into Magic for a bit when I was in college, but gave it up after a year or so. So why am I talking about this? Well, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic are still extremely popular today, but I have noticed that at least for Yu-Gi-Oh! The card game seems to have trouble attracting new players. I assume it's because the game has changed a lot since I was playing, both times, and this can seem intimidating. Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic have a lot of rules and mechanics that are introduced as time goes on. For Yu-Gi-Oh! It went from 3 basic types of cards, Spell, Trap, and Monster, to include stuff like Synchro, Exceed, Hand Traps, Pendulum, and now Link Monsters. For Magic, each new set introduces new abilities that the new cards have and changes how the game is meant to be played. So I'm making this video to give my honest opinion on these games and what I like and dislike about each of them. How to play Yu-Gi-Oh! But if you don't, I'll go over the basics. Each player has a deck of at least 40 cards of any type, with an extra deck of up to 15 cards. Each player also has life points, 8,000, at the start, and draw 5 cards to make up their hand. The player whose turn it is starts the game and they play cards in their hand, each with its own effect, to gain an advantage over their opponent. Once their turn ends, the other player takes their turn and draws a card from the top of their deck and does the same thing with both players drawing a card from their respective decks at the start of their subsequent turns. The point of the game is to win by either sending their opponent's life points to 0, deplete their opponent's deck so they can't draw any new cards, or fulfill the requirements of a specific card that includes a win condition in its effect. There's a lot more I could go over, but if you want an in-depth explanation, there's other videos for that. One thing I like about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, for the most part, the cards are always usable. No matter how many cards are printed by Konami, each one is available to be used in the current state of the game. So cards that were obtained years or decades before can still be played today, but some are obviously more viable than others. Today, my biggest problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the lack of regulation. If you asked any Yu-Gi-Oh! Player today, they would comment about how fast-paced the game is because the cards themselves are able to be used at any time during a game. The cards are only limited by themselves. If a player is able to get more cards to use, they will, and it's because of this that harsh restrictions are always included by cards that give players a card advantage, like those that allow for more cards to be accessed or drawn from the deck. It is because of this that Yu-Gi-Oh! Players now try however they can to turn their entire deck into one long combo to win the game. While some may consider this to simply be strategy, it has turned me off from ever trying to relearn the game, because games now are decided by whoever opens with the most usable hand. Now let's move on to Magic. Magic the Gathering is set up similar to Yu-Gi-Oh!, except this time the deck is 60 cards and the life total is 20. Gameplay is similar as well, with each player drawing cards and activating the effects of those cards, but the biggest difference is that each card has a cost. In the top right corner of the cards, there's a symbol that shows the card's cost to use. To pay that cost, players must play land cards, or mana, then activate that mana to use the cards. Most other things are the same, and to win the game, the player must either deplete their opponent's life total, deplete their deck, or fulfill the requirement of a specific card that lists a win condition. Compared to Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic is a somewhat slower-paced game. While in Yu-Gi-Oh!, a game can be decided in only a couple of turns, the card cost system in Magic slows the game down. Usually, weaker cards have lower costs and stronger cards have higher costs, so in order to use the best cards, players must pay. This is one of the things that I think Magic does better. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has very few limitations of what is allowed in a game, since there is no cost system, and because of that, sometimes a game can be won in the first turn. This makes Magic require more strategy in my opinion, since unlike Yu-Gi-Oh!, one player has to leverage the decision of depleting their mana to make a big push that could also leave them open if their opponent is able to stop that push. The thing I don't like about Magic is the availability of the cards. Unlike in Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic releases cards as sets, and only the standard set is viable and to be used in regular competitive play. The standard set is also decided for what is available about two or so years from the current time, so cards that were once usable will swiftly become obsolete. To compensate for this, Magic has several formats that allow older cards, but in my opinion, being forced to buy more and more cards just adds a lot of clutter in an empty bank account. Speaking of costs, Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! Are both expensive. Cards vary and fluctuate in price, and in both games, a card worth hundreds of dollars or more can drop down to only a few bucks. It doesn't help either that because cards are continuously added to the game, players need to buy more and more cards in order to have winning decks. And this is the main reason that I quit both of these games. To me, it wasn't worth the price just to buy pieces of cardboard and be stuck with hundreds of others that I was never going to use, and also that were worth next to nothing. In fact, in high school for Yu-Gi-Oh! I used Dueling Network, a website that allows people to play the game virtually, without having to buy cards. I never went to tournaments, so something like this was a boon for someone like me. No game is perfect, and each game always has its flaws, but that doesn't mean that either of these card games are bad. Each one has millions of players worldwide, with ages that range from children to older adults, and these people all play regularly. I'll most likely never play either of these games again, but I am thankful that I was able to experience these games. But that's just my opinion.